Okay guys, I have an interesting question for you. How good are pumpkins as a cutting medium? That's it's after Halloween time and there are pumpkins to be disposed of now. Since tatami is still at a premium to purchase, we're looking for alternatives to cut. Again, remember that anything that you're using as a cutting medium is always going to be something to communicate information back to you. So that doesn't mean one is inherently better than another. There's a place to cut pool noodles or water bottles or what have you. I'm going to be continuing to work using the soaked newspaper with the PEX pipe in the middle as I hopefully refine my technique with that. I happen to have a lot of pumpkins right now, so I'm going to be doing cutting with them. What are the advantages and disadvantages to cutting pumpkin? Pumpkin is fleshy. Depending on the type you have, it can be very thick rinded. It's got a hard exterior, but it's full of water, and that's the important thing. Just like when we soak tatami, if you're using something that's going to be a flesh simulant, unlike something like ballistics gel, when you cut into a gelatin mixture, there's a lot of friction on the blade if you're cutting through a very thick target. Something like this is going to be, to a degree, self-lubricating, and as a result, it's going to be much closer to approximating a flesh-like target. Now, again, this isn't the shape of any target that you usually find if you're going up against an enemy. So even if we say that this is an approximation of not exactly like meat, maybe it's somewhere in between muscle tissue and bone density as far as how thick and tough it is between the exterior rind of the pumpkin and the interior. You're not going to find anyone who is, this is almost torso size, but the torso has ribs and then it has the fleshy organs of the interior and it's got cavities, so it's going to be imperfect. We can try and cut this one, and then I have something else I want to try inside. But a pumpkin can still give you good information, just like tatami or pool noodles or clay, in that it'll show you information about the angle of your cut, if you can keep your pumpkin from falling over, and if you make your cut all the way through. There are some disadvantages though. We'll come back to it afterwards. So let's start with this one. And we'll try with this is my sharp-sided, this is my Kingston arming sword. Let's see how we do. So even though it's reasonably narrow, it's a type 14 blade, but even though it's reasonably narrow, let's see what it does against Mr. Pumpkin. So that time, cut pretty straight across the top and just gave it a little bit of a shave. So I'm going to go from a high block, high block, high block, to a cut. And again, the pumpkin gave me pretty good information as to how the cut went. It's falling off, unfortunately, but on the whole, it's doing pretty well. I'm going to cut down and do a false edge cut, even though my false edge is not as sharp. And it was still able to cut pretty convincingly on that side. It scooped very slightly, so this time it hit the pumpkin, and as the pumpkin was going over, it turned, and then I scooped the cut just a little bit. Okay, and then two cuts to end it. One cut to end it. Okay, now here's one of the issues with the pumpkin. Unlike tatami or some of the other cutting mediums, pumpkins are, again, you could call them a fruit. They're a gourd, they're a squash. But since they're a vegetable product, they tend to be pretty acidic. The water that comes out of tatami can be acidic and staining, but pumpkins certainly can be. But in addition to that, they tend to be a little sticky. Again, they're wet and lubricating, but the pulp inside of them can leave residue on your blades, or they can go scattered around. As a result, you tend to need to clean your blades very soon after doing pumpkin cutting. Otherwise, depending on the type of steel that's being used, you're going to very quickly end up with staining or even worse on your blades. So let me go and clean this one up. Now, as you can see, even though the pumpkins have very hard exterior, the types of physics involved in the sword swing make it very easy to go through this target. So I'm going to try something. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'm going to try and put one of my bone analogs, one of these PEX tubes, through a pumpkin and see if I can make it a tougher target. Who knows what's going to happen? Let's find out. Okay, so I have my bone sticking out of my pumpkin torso. So again, the pumpkin itself is going to be simulating mostly kind of like the consistency of muscle tissue. And then I have one bone, so this is kind of like the world's biggest thigh. Let's see what happens. That was cool. Right through the bone. All right. The second shot, I can't tell if the second one hit the bone or not. Let me try it again. The first one went through very easily. This might be something new to try, all right? I'm gonna try a horizontal cut, see what happens. Okay, my bone disappeared. Where did my bone go? I think my bone may have ended up in the neighbor's yard. Well, I don't think there was enough holding the bone into position because there was just a tiny little chunk of pumpkin on the other side. And that's the problem, is that the bone goes into the top of the pumpkin, then comes out of the bottom of the pumpkin, and then that's all that's held on to. So it's good for, like, you know, maybe 1 or 2 strikes, and then after that you risk the bone disappearing. Anyway, let's do a couple more strikes. Oh. Yanlingdao, very effective sword. Finally, let's have some fun with the Landsknetch Emporium Langesmesser, and we'll bring our pumpkin massacre to an end. Oops. So I didn't hit that one very hard, and that time you can see that it hit and scooped out. Try an Oberhau on the other side. This pumpkin is the biggest of the lot. It is proving a difficult customer. Unterhau was pretty good. Kind of opened it up, and it was pretty straight. That one worked well. Okay. A good showing for the Landsknetch, although it was interesting that it didn't want to cut through at the very beginning. So, in conclusion, the pumpkins are, I do like them for a couple reasons. They're inexpensive, and they're biodegradable. You know, they're not something that you have to worry about the environment, as it were. It's not a plastic material that you have to worry about recycling from that perspective. They aren't going to damage your sword on contact. You do have to worry about cleaning your blades immediately after using them, and they provide you good feedback, and there might be some potential to stick something in the middle of them, either bamboo, small dowels, or again pecks, as I was doing, to provide a little bit more resistance and fun at the target. However, they do seem to be a little bit inconsistent both in their size and the type of resistance that they offer. And the other issue, if I aim my camera down, is they do produce a reasonably large mess. So you have to be a little conscientious about how much effort you want to go through cleaning up. And admittedly, you can do composting. There are people who might use the rinds for things. My animals, the wildlife here, I end up with very fat deer who come and eat leftover pumpkins even after I've picked up all the remnants. So that can be either a plus or a minus depending on where you live. Anyway, here's some one more idea for you to test your swords on. Use the information wisely. Please be safe, guys. Take care.